The great chamber of the Galactic Council had stood for 12,000 years. It was a monument to peace and cooperation among the stars. The building was made of crystal that glowed with soft blue light, and it sat on a neutral world called Prime. Representatives from 47 different species filled the huge room. Their translation devices hummed quietly as they spoke to each other in polite words that meant nothing at all. Ambassador Moore stood at the human delegation's podium. She was a woman in her 50s with gray eyes that had seen too many meetings like this one. Her hair was pulled back in a simple style, and she wore the dark blue uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps. Behind her sat her aide, Lieutenant Daniel Perry, a young man with red hair and freckles who took notes on everything. Next to him was Dr. Lisa Grant, the cultural liaison, a black woman with kind eyes who understood alien customs better than anyone else in the service. They had been doing this for 3 years now. 3 years of negotiations that went nowhere. 3 years of promises that were never kept. 3 years of being told to wait, to be patient, to understand that humanity was still new to galactic civilization. Was tired of waiting. High Speaker rose from his elevated platform at the center of the chamber. He was a creature with 4 arms and mandibles that clicked when he spoke. His species had been part of the council for 8,000 years, and they never let anyone forget it. The collective once again demands that humanity surrender all territories in the Orion Spur, announced. His translator turned his clicking sounds into words that dripped with arrogance. Your species expanded too quickly. You took too much. You must pay the price for your ambition. Had heard these exact words before. Every session, every meeting, the same accusations, the same demands, the same coalition of older species who saw humanity as children who needed to be controlled. She kept her voice calm and professional. With respect, High Speaker, humanity settled worlds that no one else wanted, empty planets with no life. We followed every rule that this council created. We did everything right. Delegate of the Unity spoke next. She was a tall creature with blue skin and 4 eyes that blinked one after another. Her people had been rivals of humanity since first contact, jealous of how fast the human colonies had grown. The rules were written before we understood what humans really are, said. Your species breeds too quickly. You eat too much. You use too many resources. You must be limited for the good of everyone else. Felt her hands tighten on the podium, but she kept her face blank. She had learned long ago not to show emotion in this chamber. It only made things worse. Daniel leaned forward and whispered in her ear. Ambassador, Admiral just sent a message. They have moved another fleet to the border. That's the 4th time in 6 months. His jaw tightened. Every time humanity complained about these fleet movements, the Council did nothing. Every time humanity asked for protection under galactic law, they were told to be patient. Every time humanity tried to defend itself, they were called aggressive. She decided to try one more time. The human delegation requests a formal hearing on the fleet movements near our colonies. This is a clear violation of the treaty we signed when we joined this council. Made a sound that the translator turned into mocking laughter. The collective's military exercises are not your concern. Perhaps if humanity had not been so greedy in taking territory, our neighbors would not feel threatened. You have brought this on yourselves. Stood very still. She thought about the colonies in the sector. She thought about the 14 billion human beings living on 200 worlds across the galaxy. Families, children, farmers and teachers and doctors and artists. All of them building lives, contributing to civilization, asking for nothing except to be treated fairly. And here she stood, being told that her people were a problem that needed to be solved. Something changed inside her. It was not anger. She had been angry for years, and anger had gotten her nowhere. This was something different, something colder and clearer. She looked at Daniel and Lisa. A silent message passed between them. They had talked about this moment in private, late at night, hoping it would never come. But they had prepared for it just in case. Straightened her shoulders and spoke to the chamber one last time. Her voice was quiet, but it carried to every corner of the room. For 3 years, humanity has tried to talk to you. We have compromised when you asked us to. We have given up things that mattered to us. We have bent ourselves into shapes that pleased you, and still you demand more. Still you move your warships to our borders. Still you treat us like a disease that needs to be cured instead of a people who deserve respect. The chamber had gone completely silent. Evan's mandibles had stopped clicking. Every alien eye was fixed on the human ambassador. Effective immediately, continued, the United Earth government is leaving the Galactic Council. All treaties are suspended. All agreements are frozen. All diplomatic arrangements are under review. Humanity will take care of its own problems in its own way from this moment forward. She gathered her documents with hands that did not shake. Daniel and Lisa rose and stood behind her, their faces calm and determined. When you are ready to treat us as equals, you know where to find us. Until that day comes, we have nothing more to say to you. The human delegation walked toward the exit. Their footsteps echoed in the stunned silence, did not look back. She did not need to see the shock on their faces. She could feel it. Behind her, 46 species stared at the empty podium. In 12,000 years, no one had ever done what the humans had just done. No one had ever simply refused to play the game. No one had ever walked away. As stepped through the great doors, she allowed herself one small moment of satisfaction. They had called humanity young and foolish. They had said humans did not understand how the galaxy worked. They had treated her people like children who needed to learn their place. Well, she thought, perhaps it was time for the teachers to learn something instead. Outside, a human shuttle waited to take them back to Earth. Daniel fell into step beside her. Ambassador, what happens now? Looked up at the alien sky, at stars that suddenly seemed full of possibility instead of limitation. Now we show them who we really are. The shuttle doors closed behind them, and humanity's new chapter began. 6 months passed, and the galaxy waited for humanity to come crawling back. In the council chamber, the empty section where the human delegation used to sit had become an uncomfortable sight. Every meeting, every debate, every vote, there it was. Empty chairs, silent screens, a reminder of what everyone had dismissed as a temporary tantrum. The older species had been so sure of themselves. Humanity was young and weak, they said. Humans needed the council's protection and guidance. Give them a few weeks of isolation, and they would return, apologizing and begging to be let back in. They did not return. High Speaker sent 3 official messages to Earth. Each one was written in careful diplomatic language, but the meaning was clear. He was giving humanity a chance to admit they had been wrong. He was being generous enough to consider letting them back into the fold. Each message went unanswered. Earth did not even send a rejection. They simply ignored him, as if the most powerful political body in the galaxy was not worth their time. The Unity tried a different approach. Delegates sent her agents to make contact through neutral traders. Surely the humans would talk business, even if they refused to talk politics. Commerce was something every species understood. The agents found human merchants who were perfectly happy to trade. Human ships still traveled to neutral ports, buying and selling goods just like before. But whenever the conversation turned to the council, or to treaties, or to diplomacy, the humans would simply smile and change the subject. One freighter captain named George Palmer had become famous for his response to a diplomat who tried to discuss rejoining the council. "Look, friend," George had said, scratching his gray beard, "I'm just here to move cargo. You want to talk about trade routes and shipping costs, I'm your man. You want to talk politics, you'll have to call Earth. But I'll warn you, my grandmother's been trying to reach customer service about her broken communication unit for 3 weeks now. So good luck getting through." The diplomat had not found this funny at all. Meanwhile, the grew bolder. They saw humanity's withdrawal as proof of weakness. Surely a strong species would have stayed and fought within the system. Walking away was what cowards did. So they pushed their military exercises even closer to human space, testing the boundaries, seeing how far they could go. They expected protests. They expected desperate calls for help. They expected the humans to realize their mistake and beg the Council for protection. Instead, they received a single short message from Earth Defense Force Regional Command. The sender was Admiral Cole, a woman whose service record was longer than some species' histories. Her message was simple and direct. You are approaching sovereign human territory. You have 72 hours to withdraw your forces. This is not a request. This is not the beginning of a negotiation. This is your only warning. The fleet commander, a veteran named, read the message and laughed. His fleet outnumbered the known human forces in the sector by 3-1. These young species always thought they were stronger than they really were. It would be educational to teach them otherwise. He ignored the warning and continued his approach. At the 72-hour mark, his sensor officer made a strange sound. It was the equivalent of surprise and fear mixed together. "Commander," the officer said, "something is emerging from behind the fourth moon of the colony world." Looked at his tactical display and felt his confidence drain away like water through sand. It was a human, not the scattered patrol ships his intelligence had promised, not the outdated vessels he had expected. This was a full carrier strike force, 8 capital ships surrounded by dozens of smaller escorts, and leading them was something that made his flagship look like a shuttle craft. The vessel was enormous. Its hull was covered with weapon batteries and launch bays. It moved through space with the easy grace of a predator that knew it had no natural enemies. "This is the Earth Defense Vessel Determination," came a calm voice over the communication channel. The speaker was Captain Henry Shaw, a man in his 40s with short brown hair and the relaxed confidence of someone who knew exactly what he was capable of. "You were warned. You did not withdraw. You now have 30 minutes to begin your retreat. After that, we will consider your presence an act of war. There will be no further warnings. There will be no negotiation. Do you understand?" Commander understood. He gave the order to retreat. The fleet so quickly that 2 of their ships collided with each other trying to turn around. They limped back to their own space and reported to the Council that the humans had threatened them. They demanded that something be done about human aggression. But in the quiet corners of the Council's halls, different conversations were happening. A reptilian species who had always stayed neutral in Council politics had been watching very carefully. Delegate of the Federation met with his advisors in a private room. His scales were a deep green color that darkened when he was thinking hard. "The humans did not fire a single shot," he observed. "They simply showed their strength and held their ground. When they retreated, the humans let them go." "What does this mean?" asked one of his advisors. Was quiet for a long moment. "It means we have been thinking about humanity all wrong. They are not weak children throwing a tantrum. They are something else entirely, something we do not yet understand." On Earth, life went on. Factories built ships. Scientists made discoveries. Children went to school and learned about the stars their grandparents had never seen. Most ordinary people barely noticed the Council's absence. Their daily lives continued unchanged. But they paid attention to the news. And when President Maria Vance addressed the United Earth Assembly, they watched with pride. She was a small woman with silver hair and sharp eyes. She had been a colony governor before becoming president, and she spoke with the directness of someone who had solved real problems instead of just talking about them. "We did not leave the Council because we wanted conflict," she said. "We left because we refused to accept a place at the bottom of their ladder. Our door remains open to anyone who wants to deal with us fairly. but we will not beg for respect that we have already earned through our actions." Her words were broadcast to every human world. In the council chamber, delegates watched the recording in uncomfortable silence. The humans were not coming back. The humans were not sorry. The humans were building something new, and the rest of the galaxy was going to have to decide what to do about it. 6 months of silence had taught the council more than 3 years of talking ever had. Humanity was done asking for permission. 1 year after humanity walked out, the galaxy looked very different. The Galactic Council still met in its crystal chamber. The delegates still gave speeches and held votes and followed ancient traditions. But something had changed. The easy confidence was gone. The certainty that they controlled the shape of civilization had cracked like ice under pressure. 3 smaller species had quietly signed trade agreements with Earth. They did not ask the Council for permission. They did not announce their decisions in the Great Chamber. They simply opened their ports to human ships and began doing business on terms that benefited everyone equally. The Federation went even further. Delegate had convinced his government to do something unprecedented. They opened a formal embassy on Earth's moon, the first non-human diplomatic mission on human soil. Negotiations began for a mutual defense treaty that would bind the 2 civilizations together. When news of this reached the Council, High Speaker reacted with fury. He called an emergency session and demanded that they explain themselves. "You are breaking the unity of this body," declared. "You are legitimizing human defiance. You are betraying everything the Council stands for." Delegate listened to this speech with the patience of a stone. His 4 eyes blinked slowly as he prepared his response. "The Federation has always done what is best for our people," he said. "That is our right as a sovereign civilization. We have found humanity to be reliable partners. They keep their promises. They honor their agreements. They treat us with respect." He paused. "That is more than I can say for some members of this council." No one needed to ask who he meant. The cracks were spreading. Every week brought new reports of species reaching out to Earth, asking about trade, about technology, about the possibility of friendship outside the Council's rules. The old order was breaking apart, and no one seemed able to stop it. But none of this mattered compared to what was happening in the outer territories. There were a species that had survived for centuries by raiding the edges of civilized space. They were nomads, traveling in massive fleets of warships and colony vessels, taking what they needed from anyone too weak to stop them. The Council had always dealt with them by sending joint military forces to push them back. It was expensive and it cost lives, but it worked. Now, with member species focused on their own problems and without human contributions to the defense fund, the response to raids was slow. Then it got slower. Then it stopped happening at all. They always noticed weakness. Their first major attack hit a farming colony. 2,000 people died. The raiders took enough food to feed their fleet for months and disappeared into deep space before any help could arrive. The second attack struck a mining outpost. The third hit a council diplomatic station itself. This had never happened before. Attacking council property was supposed to be unthinkable. They no longer thought it was unthinkable. They thought it was easy. Emergency sessions were called. Accusations flew across the chamber like weapons. They blamed them for not protecting their borders. They blamed them for making everyone weak with their political games. Everyone blamed the humans for leaving and making the council vulnerable. But no one sent ships. No one wanted to spend the resources. No one wanted to take the risk. And then they made a terrible mistake. They attacked a convoy traveling through what they thought was neutral space. It was 3 cargo ships carrying medical supplies, the kind of easy target that had been hitting for centuries. 12 raider vessels closed in, expecting surrender. 3 of the raider ships exploded before anyone knew what was happening. The convoy was under human protection. They had been carrying medicine to a colony, and their escort consisted of two Earth defense vessels commanded by Captain Samuel Price. He was a quiet man from a farming family who had joined the service because he believed in protecting people who could not protect themselves. When they attacked, he did not call for backup. He did not try to negotiate. He did not run away. He simply gave the order to engage, and his crews did what they had trained to do. The battle lasted 11 minutes. 9 ships were destroyed. The other 3 fled. Captain Price's ships had taken minor damage. The convoy arrived at its destination on schedule. His report to command was brief and professional. Hostile vessels engaged and destroyed. Convoy delivered safely. No human casualties, requesting resupply of missiles. The colony governor watched recordings of the battle with something close to awe. He sent his own report to the Federation Senate. The humans did not hesitate, he wrote. They did not ask for help. They did not try to talk their way out. They simply fought and they won. I have served on the border for 40 years. I have never seen anything like it. Word spread quickly. For the first time in centuries, they had met a species that did not treat them as a problem to be managed. Humanity saw them as a threat to be eliminated. There was no fear in the human response. There was no negotiation. There was only swift and overwhelming violence. They quietly changed their raiding patterns. They avoided human shipping lanes. They learned to check twice before attacking any convoy. The lesson had been taught in the only language they understood. In the council chamber, a growing number of delegates demanded that something be done to bring humanity back. They have proven their value, one said. They have shown the strength we need. We were wrong about them. But's pride was stronger than his wisdom. We do not go begging to those who have insulted us. If the humans want a return, they must ask. They must show proper respect for this body and its traditions. The council voted to send an invitation, but it was written in the old style, full of conditions and requirements and implied insults. Humanity was welcome to apply for membership again, subject to review, with certain limitations to be discussed. Earth's response came from President Vance herself. It was 3 words long. Thank you, no. The message was received in the council chamber during a routine session. Read it out loud, his mandibles clicking with disbelief. Delegate allowed himself a small smile. He had been expecting exactly this response. The humans had not changed. The council had not changed. Nothing would be different until someone was willing to bend. And it was becoming very clear that the humans had no intention of bending first. Supreme Warlord stood on the bridge of his flagship and stared at the star map with hatred in his 4 hearts. For 600 years, his people had lived by raiding the weak and running from the strong. It was not a noble existence, but it had kept them alive when other nomad species had died out. They were survivors. They were predators. They took what they needed and they never apologized. But now, for the first time in living memory, the old ways were failing. It had started with the humans. After Captain Price destroyed those raider ships protecting the convoy, other species had started paying attention. The hired human military advisors. A small civilization on the edge of human territory signed a protection agreement that gave them access to Earth's early warning systems. Even who had been rivals of humanity since the beginning, were quietly buying human weapons through secret deals. Everywhere looked, the prey was growing fangs. His raiders reported that easy targets were becoming harder to find. Convoys traveled in groups now. Colonies had better defenses. Ships that used to surrender at the first sign of attack were fighting back, using tactics that his captains recognized as human in origin. The way of life was being strangled, and knew exactly who was responsible. He made his decision in the dark hours between stars, alone on his bridge with nothing but his rage for company. If humanity was the source of this new resistance, then humanity must be destroyed. Cut off the head and the body would die. Remove the humans and the galaxy would return to the way it had always been. They assembled the largest fleet in their history. 1,200 warships gathered at the edge of human space, warriors from 100 different clans, united by the promise of the greatest raid in memory. The human colonies were rich and soft, told them. Their worlds were full of food and technology and slaves. Victory would make them all wealthy beyond dreams. His warriors believed him. They wanted to believe him. The alternative was accepting that their way of life was ending. Earth detected the fleet 3 weeks before it arrived. President Maria Vance called the Defense Council together in an underground bunker beneath the capital city. The room was filled with military officers and civilian leaders, all of them studying the tactical displays that showed the approaching enemy. Admiral Cole stood at the main screen, her silver hair pulled back tight, her uniform perfect despite the late hour. She had been preparing for this moment since the day humanity left the Council. "They are fully committed," she reported. "This is not a raid. This is an invasion force. They expect us to call for help from the Council. They expect us to panic and negotiate. They expect us to be afraid." Secretary of Defense Jonathan Blake studied the numbers. 1,200 enemy ships, the largest hostile fleet any human had ever faced. What do we have in the theater? 4 carrier groups can engage immediately. 6 more can arrive within 3 days. The Determination and her sister ships are already moving to intercept. Blake nodded slowly. He was a tall man with gray at his temples and the calm manner of someone who had seen many crises. "And the new systems, the ones we've been developing since we left the Council." Admiral Cole allowed herself a small smile, ready for their first real test. President Vance listened to her advisors discuss tactics and positioning and supply lines. When they finished, she asked only one question: "Can we win?" Admiral Cole met her eyes. "Madam President, we can do more than win. We can end the threat permanently, but it will not be clean and it will not be quiet. The galaxy will see what we are capable of." Vance was silent for a moment. She thought about the colonies that would be in danger. She thought about the lives that would be lost. She thought about what it would mean for humanity's future if they showed their true strength to a galaxy that had underestimated them. "Do it," she said. "Show them who we are." The Battle of the Threshold began on a Tuesday morning by Earth's calendar. They came in fast and aggressive, their formations designed for maximum intimidation. They had spent centuries perfecting these tactics against enemies who would see their numbers and lose hope. Fear was their greatest weapon. Captain Henry Shaw of the Determination watched them approach on his tactical display. Around him, his bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency, preparing systems and checking weapons. No one showed any sign of nervousness. "Signal from Admiral Cole," his communications officer reported. "All groups report ready. We are cleared to engage." Shaw nodded. "Send to all ships. Execute pattern Delta 7, and someone put on some music. I think this calls for something classical." The human fleet moved. What happened next would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for centuries. They expected their enemies to form defensive lines and try to hold position. Instead, the human ships drove directly into the heart of their formation, weapons firing in every direction. The Determination led the charge. She was the largest warship humanity had ever built, and she fought like something out of a nightmare. Her main guns could destroy a cruiser with a single shot. Her missile batteries filled space with fire. Her point defense systems swatted down enemy weapons before they could strike. Around her, the other human ships worked in perfect coordination. They covered each other's blind spots. They concentrated fire on enemy flagships. They used maneuvers that they had never seen before, tactics developed in secret over 3 years of preparation. And then the new systems came online. The fleet relied on a central command network that linked all their ships together. It was how they coordinated their attacks, how their commanders gave orders, how they knew what was happening across the battlefield. Without it, each ship would have to fight alone. Humanity had spent 3 years developing a weapon specifically designed to destroy that network. Every ship went blind at the same moment. Their screens showed static, their communications filled with noise. Their commanders screamed orders that no one could hear. 1,200 warships became 1,200 individual vessels, fighting blind against an enemy that could see everything. The slaughter lasted 9 hours. 800 ships were destroyed in the first 2 hours alone. The rest fought on with desperate courage. But courage was not enough against enemies who knew exactly where they were and exactly how to kill them. Supreme Warlord watched his dream die around him. His flagship was hit 17 times but refused to fall apart. When the human boarding craft attached to his hull, he gathered his personal guard and prepared to die fighting. The hatch blew inward. Through the smoke came human marines in powered armor, moving with the smooth coordination of predators who had done this many times before. Their leader was a sergeant named Richard Torres, a stocky man with a face and calm eyes. He looked at the warlord and his guards. He looked at their weapons, their desperate stance, their readiness to die. Then he spoke in a voice that the translator rendered without emotion. "Sir, you are now a prisoner of the Earth Defense Force. Your fleet has been destroyed. Your invasion has failed. You can die here fighting or you can surrender and live. Either way, this war is over. Please don't make this difficult." Looked at the human for a long moment. Then he lowered his weapon and ordered his guards to stand down. There was no point in dying for nothing. As the Marines secured the bridge, Captain Shaw arrived to accept the formal surrender. He was shorter than had expected, an ordinary-looking human with no visible signs of the monster who had just destroyed the largest fleet in history. The warlord asked only one question: "Why did your council not warn us of your strength?" Shaw considered the question seriously. "They didn't know," he said finally. "We've been busy." The news reached the Galactic Council within days. The recordings of the battle spread across every network in civilized space. Species who had dismissed humanity as children watched in shock as human ships tore through an enemy fleet 3 times their size. High Speaker sat alone in his quarters and watched the determination carve through formations like a knife through water. He watched the precision. He watched the coordination. He watched a civilization reveal capabilities that no one had suspected. Finally, he understood what his colleagues had been trying to tell him. Humanity was not a young species that needed guidance. They were not upstarts who needed to be contained. They were a civilization that had spent 3 years preparing for exactly this moment. And they had done it without asking anyone for permission. 2 years and 3 months after Ambassador Moore walked out of the Galactic Council, she walked back in. The crystal chamber looked exactly the same. The same blue light glowed from the walls. The same platforms rose in circles around the central speaking area. The same ancient protocols governed how delegates were supposed to behave. But everything had changed. Was not alone this time. Behind her came a delegation representing not just Earth, but 14 other civilizations. The Federation walked beside humanity as equal partners. The Concordat stood with them. A dozen smaller species who had signed what was now called the Terra Accords filled the rows behind them. The chamber was full. Every species in the galaxy had sent their most senior representatives. Even species who rarely attended council sessions had made the journey to Prime. Everyone understood that this meeting would decide the future of galactic civilization. The human delegation took their old seats and noticed that the podium had been cleaned and polished. Someone had prepared for their return. High Speaker was not there. He had resigned 3 days earlier, giving personal reasons that fooled no one. His replacement was a younger named Lowe's, who had argued against the harsh treatment of humanity from the very beginning. He had been chosen specifically because he was willing to admit that his species had been wrong. Lowe's rose from his platform and addressed the chamber. His translator gave his words a tone of genuine respect that would have been impossible from his predecessor. "Ambassador Moore," he said, "the Galactic Council welcomes humanity's return to these proceedings. We hope that this marks the beginning of a new era of cooperation between our peoples." Inclined her head politely. "Thank you, High Speaker, but I need to be clear about something. Humanity is not returning to the Council." A murmur ran through the chamber. Delegates whispered to each other in a dozen different languages. Some looked confused, others looked worried. A few, noticed, looked like they had expected exactly this. She continued speaking, her voice calm and confident. "We are here because the galaxy is at a crossroads. The old systems have failed. The crisis proved that the Council's collective defense does not work. The trade disputes that continue on every border prove that the economic rules are outdated. The fact that we are all here today, uncertain about the future, proves that something must change." She turned to Dr. Lisa Grant, who activated a holographic display that floated above the central platform. It showed a map of the galaxy with certain territories highlighted in blue. The highlighted area was impressive, covering a significant portion of known space. "This is the Terra Accords," explained. 14 species have already joined. We are not a rival to the Council. We are an alternative. Any species may join us, and membership requires only 3 things. She held up one finger. First, recognition of sovereignty. Every member civilization controls its own territory. No one tells anyone else how to live. A second finger. Second, commitment to mutual defense. An attack on one member is an attack on all. We protect each other. A third finger. Third, fair trading practices. Open markets, honest dealing, no special privileges for older or larger species. She lowered her hand. There are no tiers of membership. There are no senior partners and junior partners. There is only cooperation among equals. Delegate of the rose to speak. His scales had gone a darker green than usual, a sign of strong emotion among his people. "The Federation has been a member of the Terra Accords for 18 months, he said. "In that time, our border security has improved by 40%. Our trade has increased by 60%. And not once, has any member of the Accords told us that we were expanding too quickly or that our population was growing too fast." His 4 eyes swept across the chamber, landing on the delegation. "Not once has anyone suggested that we were a problem to be contained." The words hung in the air. Everyone knew what he meant. Everyone remembered the speeches that had driven humanity away. Spoke again. "The Council has a choice. You can continue as you have always done and watch more species choose to join us. Or you can change. You can recognize that the galaxy is not a hierarchy with ancient species at the top and younger ones at the bottom. You can become partners instead of parents." She paused, letting the silence stretch out. "Or you can stay here in this beautiful chamber talking to yourselves while the future moves on without you. The choice is yours." The debate lasted 3 days. Ancient protocols were invoked. Speeches were given by delegates representing civilizations that had existed before humanity learned to use fire. Alliances that had lasted for shifted and reformed. Votes were taken, reversed, and taken again. Through it all, and her delegation waited patiently. They answered questions. They explained details. They did not beg and they did not threaten. They simply presented the alternative and let the Council decide. In the end, the Galactic Council voted to dissolve itself. It was the most significant political event in 12,000 years. The body that had governed interstellar civilization since before human beings existed chose to end its own existence and apply for collective membership in the Terra Accords. High Speaker Lowe's signed the historic document himself. When a human journalist asked how he felt about the change, he made a sound that translated as wry amusement. I feel that we should have listened more carefully when Ambassador Moore first asked us to treat her people as equals. We could have saved everyone a great deal of trouble. Was standing nearby, she allowed herself a small smile. Better late than never, high speaker. The new organization, the Galactic Accord, held its first session 6 months later. Moore was elected as one of 3 rotating chairpersons, alongside Delegate and Lowe's himself. The chamber looked the same, but everything about what happened inside it was different. Decisions were made by consensus, not by the votes of senior species. Trade agreements benefited everyone, not just the wealthy and powerful. Defense commitments were honored, and the survivors learned very quickly that raiding Accord shipping was no longer survivable. On Earth, President Maria Vance addressed the public on the anniversary of the new Accord's founding. Her speech was broadcast to every human world and to the dozens of alien civilizations that now called humanity friends. 3 years ago, we walked away from a system that refused to see us as we truly are, she said. Today, we walk forward into a future that we helped create. Let this be our legacy. Not that we defeated our enemies, but that we found a way to turn them into friends. Not that we demanded respect, but that we earned it by showing respect to others. She looked directly into the camera, speaking to billions of listeners across the stars. This is who we are. This is what we do. We build. We grow. We reach out our hands in friendship to anyone willing to take them. And when friendship is rejected, we stand firm until the other side is ready to try again. In the void between stars, human ships traveled alongside vessels from a dozen other species. They protected each other. They traded with each other. They built something new together, something better than what had existed before. The galaxy had faced a crisis when humanity ended all talks. And humanity, being human, had turned that crisis into the beginning of something wonderful. The stars had never seemed so bright.